Hello and welcome to episode 4 of MTG Vintage Flashback. Today we will be covering the Antiquities War. The tales of a grand war between brothers blanketed much of Magic's early expansions. This is usually referred to as the Brothers' War, and less frequently as the Antiquities War, which was depicted as a card in the Dominaria expansion set. Urza and his younger brother Mishra are deeply tied into much of Magic's lore. In fact, even the Magic Multiverse's timeline is based on their birth via the Argivian reckoning calendar, which sets 0 AR to their birth year, where Urza was born on the first day and Mishra born on the last. Although these two would go on to be huge names in the Magic Multiverse, they came from rather humble beginnings. As young men, the two took interest in the ancient race known as the Thrawn and their inventions. Together, they became archaeologist apprentices under the teachings of a woman named Takesha. While at the young age of 20 years old, the two brothers and their mentor excavated a site that would fulfill their archaeological desires. This site was the last remaining pieces of the Thrawn Empire. Urza would name it Koilos, an Argivian word translating to secret. There, Urza and Mishra stumbled upon a special power stone, one of the devices the Thrawn used to power their machines, and eventually the power sources of Urza's and Mishra's creations. When Urza and Mishra attempted to excavate the stone, it exploded and split into two pieces which were held each by one of the brothers. Urza's half had the power to give machines strength, which he called the Might Stone, and Mishra's half had the power to weaken machines, and therefore was named the Weak Stone. The two brothers became deeply envious of the other's half of the stone, knowing through their studies of the Thrawn that possessing both halves would give the user unrivaled powers. Thus began the animosity between the brothers. This animosity would spark into war when one night the brothers reached a confrontation and began to fight with their stones. Takesha attempted to come between the brothers and stop the fighting, but was accidentally killed in her intervention. This caused the brothers to separate and begin building their armies. As the two diverged, they took on new lives and new civilizations. Mishra chose to stay in the Falaji region where the brothers had been working. There, he used his Weak Stone to help tame dragon engines, powerful but dangerous war machines the Falaji utilize. This helped to unite the clans of Falaji as it began to expand its empire. During this time, Mishra gained the apprenticeship of Ashnod, a highly loyal and sadistic human artificer. Urza made his way over to Yosha, where inhabitants had already been warring with the Falaji. There, he used his expertise with artifacts to win the favor of the Yoshan warlord to garner approval to marry the warlord's daughter. Urza also found an apprentice in his new life, another human artificer by the name of Tanos. As both regions began to thrive, the Yoshan warlord initiated peace talks with the Falaji, who they have historically warred with. Urza and Mishra, completely unaware of the other's whereabouts, convened at this meeting and were surprised to find the other there. Before the two could attempt to put their differences aside, the Yoshan warlord began to attack the Falaji with Urza's artifacts. Through the carnage, Mishra was able to escape. He then took Ashnod to Koilos in a desperate attempt to acquire more weapons. There they discovered and entered a portal to the hell-like plane of Phyrexia. While they were there, they were attacked by the Phyrexian demon known as Gix. Before they could be remanded, Mishra and Ashnod escaped and closed the portal, though this would not be their last encounter. As the war raged on between the Yoshan and the Falaji, it became clear that Mishra's dragon engines were slowly overpowering Urza's machinations. Urza was named Lord Protector of Argive and was tasked with protecting the coast. Paralleling that, Mishra was named leader of the Falaji and continued using his power to help the nation expand and take over others. The two armies constantly went back and forth, never quite gaining a definitive edge over the other. Meanwhile, several nations were torn apart during the war, and the land began to become stripped of its resources in order to sustain the battles. While conquering Teresia City, Mishra's apprentice Ashnod found a villager by the name of Lauren who possessed a powerful artifact by the name of the Golgothian Silex. Ashnod took the artifact from her by force as she attempted to keep it away from Urza and Mishra, whom she had known from working with Takesha herself when the brothers were merely boys. The Silex contained inscriptions which described a type of Armageddon or apocalypse. While the war continued to work towards its climax, the demon Gix was working in the background. Gix reopened the portal to Phyrexia and Koilos and began gathering his own army, known as the Brotherhood of Gix. This brotherhood went on to spy on both sides of the war, all the while giving information back to the Phyrexian. His ultimate goal was to gain the Power Stones from the brothers in order to ascend to his own final domination. Eventually, for seemingly no reason, Gix was able to work his way into being Mishra's chief advisor. Decades passed with no clear winner of the war, and both sides began to drag while resources continued to dwindle. Urza then discovered an untapped island by the name of Argoth, which the Brotherhood then found out about and passed on to Gix, who then passed that information on to Mishra. Both brothers, on their own accord, began to level the island, not even a bit hindered by the inhabitants who tried to fight back. Understanding that this war had gone on long enough, Urza was ready to have his final showdown with his brother. The two began to battle on Argoth. Meanwhile, Ashnod began to realize that Mishra was no longer who he originally was. He had been corrupted by Gix and was part Machination himself. Realizing that she was no longer pledging allegiance to the artificer who took her on as an apprentice, she decided to give the Golgothian Silex to Tawnos. Gix appeared during this and attempted to kill them, but Ashnod stalled him long enough to allow Tawnos to escape with the Silex. The brothers continued their battle. After injuring Mishra, Urza noticed that some of his flesh had already been replaced by machines, and that his brother was no longer truly alive. At this point, Urza had an emotional breakthrough and realized how much devastation had been felt across the plane due to his and his brother's petty war. As Mishra began another attack, Urza unleashed the pure energy of the Silex, fueled by his new emotions. The explosion from the Silex instantly decimated the armies of machines and sent a shockwave across the plane. Gix barely escaped this shockwave through the portal back to Phyrexia. After surviving the blast, Urza ascended and became a planeswalker, while the Mightstone and Weakstone replaced his eyes. As he and Tawnos looked at the landscape of their destroyed land, he tells him that Mishra was killed, but had already been truly dead for some time and was more or less a puppet of Gix. Tawnos wanted Urza to stay and rebuild, but Urza felt the need to continue on his journey, especially as Gix was still out there. The Silex blast caused the Shard of 12 Worlds to form around Dominaria and other planes, which would prevent others from planeswalking in and out for over 1,000 years. This eventually led to the summit of the Null Moon, where a group of planeswalkers and Elder Dragon Chromium fought in order to try to break the shard and escape. This was also the start of the Great Ice Age. That's it for this episode of MTG Vintage Flashback. We hope this episode added a lot of insight into some of Magic's biggest but also relatively unknown characters. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below. If you'd like to stay updated with more, go ahead and subscribe and sign up for notifications. Thanks for watching.